Hello, welcome back to my network. We're at PDAC and I'm joined with Ug Jackman, the CEO and Director of Northern Graphite. Ug, lovely to see you again.
Yeah, it's very nice to see you. How are you?
Good. I think we called up in London in the studio, didn't we? I think back in, was it last summer?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, and from what I understand, I've been following the story along. There's been a lot that's happened since then. But before we dive into that, just remind people who Northern Graphite is, and then we can dive in.
Sure. Northern Graphite is we're a graphite company. We have three assets within the company, three mining assets in the company. We have a mine that is in production in Quebec today. We are the only producer of graphite in North America, in Lac-des-Îles, Quebec. We have a mine in Namibia that was producing until 2018, and we are busy putting that mine back in production. And then we have a development project in Ontario called Biscuit Creek that is basically shovel ready, and that we're looking to put into production in 2026. And then in addition to that, we're also developing our downstream operations to be able to supply the battery makers with the anode, which is entirely made of graphite. And to do that, we have a secured land up at northern Quebec in Bécomo, and we are basically working with a partner to install a very sophisticated processing line to be able to turn our graphite into battery anode material.
Perfect. Okay, loads. I think last time we went on for an hour. We can't do that today, but there's a lot to cover because there's so many different parts of this business.
Sure.
But let's start with the cash generative part of the business in Quebec. You're currently producing around 10,000.
Yeah, we're producing up to 15,000 tons a year out of the operation, and our intent was always to expand that. The life of the mine was coming to an end at the end of 2024, and so last year we did a lot of exploration, and we found a lot more graphite. And in fact, we published a resource estimate that basically gives us an additional at least 8 years of life to the mine, which was a big deal.
Yeah, so because this was when we were talking back in June. This was the thing that we were waiting for, right? Let's expand this mine life. You got the plant there, you got everything there. Let's get some more throughput and build it. So you've succeeded in that.
We did.
Yeah.
We did. Yeah, and so we're ramping up production because demand is very strong right now because of what China is doing in terms of limiting the export.
Yep.
So we're moving from 4 to 7 days, and we've got the resource that we need, and we need to turn that into a reserve, which we will do as soon as possible, and then. By the end of the year, we'll be in production with a new pit, and we'll be ramping up from 15 to 25,000 tons a year, which of course will allow us to generate a little bit more cash flow, which is always good news for us.
Yeah. How meaningful is that? I wouldn't, obviously, I know it's tough if you haven't given guidance to the market, etc. But how much does that change the business in terms of jumping up to that 25,000 per year, and where does that put you?
It's significant because, there's two effects. The first one is we can spread our fixed cost over a bigger amount of products, so our costs go down. And second, because we sell more volume, our income goes up. So bottom line, it could actually allow us to almost double the amount of cash flow we can generate out of the operation. So that's very significant for us. But, more importantly, it also sets us up in Lac-des-Îles because we only explored 3 of the 11 targets we had. So we still have we had 14 targets. So we have about 11 targets more that we need to explore, which we will do this year. And so there's a lot more potential to find more graphite on the site and become much bigger than 25,000 tons.
And okay, so is that the long-term picture in Quebec? Obviously, we've got the downstream that we can talk about in a minute, but in Quebec, you get up to 25,000 tons, which you can do now that you've shored up this resource. How easy is it for you to add on? Is it modular in terms of the plant? Can you add on some more capacity fairly easy?
Yeah, I mean, the big benefit is that, first of all, is the amount of capex that would be required to expand the facility that we have versus building a brand new one. In the mining business, it's always better to build on an existing facility than it is to do a greenfield because you don't have to do the infrastructure. For example, in Lac-des-Îles, we have an existing tailing dam that we can use. We have all the infrastructure in place. All the exploration we are doing is within the mining lease. So from a permitting point of view, it's much simpler. And so, if for example, hypothetically, we found a lot more graphite on the ground, we could easily triple the capacity of that site without that much investment. Probably a lot less, or I would say at least half, if not 1/3 of what would be required in a normal greenfield facility. So,
And what sort of timeline are we looking at for that? When do you want that to become a reality?
well, we're going to do the exploration this year. So, I would expect that very similar to what we did this year, by February of next year, we would have the first results of that study, and then probably towards the middle end of 2025, we could make a decision on what we want to do. And because the site's already permitted and existing, the timeline is much shorter as well. So.
And just remind us, what's the basket price for the graphite that you're mining out of Quebec at the moment?
Yeah, so we are selling our graphite on average at about $1,500 per ton.
Okay, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I mean, we announced in the resource about a couple 100,000 tons. So if you're selling it at $1,500 a ton, it's significant dollars.
Yeah.
We're talking $300 million of sales, over 8 or 9 years. And that's generating, anywhere between $600 per ton of margin. I think that's what we report today, so it's $120 million of margin, that new resource that we found is going to generate for us that didn't exist before. So it's significant.
Good. And I guess, again, this is the complex nature of your business in terms of how many aspects there are to it. Maybe we should touch on Namibia next, because that you're pretty determined to get back into production fairly soon, right?
It's definitely, our second catalyst. Our first catalyst is really to expand the plant in Lac des Iles, like we said, with a resource. But in Namibia, the second one is we need to get that plant restarted, because, there's 1.6 million tons of graphite in the ground. We've produced them before, so we know how to produce the graphite in Namibia. And by the way, the plant that's there has been producing before. So what we are doing is we're relocating the equipment and building a new tailing dam and bringing water and power to be able to produce 31,000 tons. And the cost of that is $35 million. So, it's a very good return on the investment. And then once we do that, we can look at expanding that, because since there is 1.6 million tons in the ground, once we're producing 30,000 tons, there's no reason why we couldn't produce 100,000 tons a year, or even 150,000 tons a year, if the demand was there and if we could create that demand.
And obviously this has been in production before, so how qualified is the product? How easy would it be potentially to sort? Because a lot of this is offtake dependent, usually with graphite company, and obviously there's a process you have to go through. How far along the process are you with the actual quality of the product and selling it on?
Yeah, actually, we had material that we could sample customers, so we've already done that, and there's material on its way to customers in Europe and in North America, because that's who we are targeting the market, mostly Europe. So, I think we're pretty far advanced in the process of doing that. And the material has been tested for use in batteries and looks great as a battery material. So, the objective for us is to start the mine on the traditional markets, which would be the industrial markets. So refractory is what we sell today in North America from Lac des Iles, and benefit from the fact that China is no longer exporting as much material as they did. So we're coming in exactly at the right time with the right product. And then build on that with the anode material strategy, which is our third catalyst, if you want, the third leg of our stool, which is taking the extra graphite we can find in Lac des Iles and in Namibia, and then send it over to Baie-Comeau into our anode material facility, so that we can benefit from the growth of the battery industry, which is really the end goal of being in the graphite business. Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And also there is a massive premium of being able to sell the end product versus a flake graphite to a...
There is a premium. I wouldn't say it's massive. I mean, there's definitely a premium. But, more importantly than the premium, it's just the size of that market. If you look at the traditional graphite market, it's relatively contained between Europe and US at a couple 100,000 tons. So, today we service 15 to 20% of that market in the US. We'll probably service 15 to 20% of that market in Europe, and that will be a nice 50, 60,000 tons business per year. But, the battery industry is forecasted to be 1.2 terawatt in Europe, 1.3 terawatt in the US in terms of capacity of batteries that are going to be built in the gigafactories. and that will require 2.5 million tons of graphite. So, if you think about the opportunity, it's really more in the batteries in terms of the size of the market. Now, of course, we're selling the graphite at $1,500 per ton. In the battery market, the battery anode material is being sold between $8,000 to $10,000 per ton. So
I'd call that a massive increase.
it is, but there's a lot to be done to that material before you can turn it into anode. And the yield is 50%. So what a lot of people don't understand is that you need 2 tons of graphite to produce 1 ton of anode material. And so between the amount of investment you have to make and the cost that's associated with producing the graphite and the yield that you get, still very good 30% margin, EBITDA margin you can generate. However, you have to invest hundreds of millions of dollars to do that.
Yeah, true. But you'd rather get a 30% margin on 10,000 than maybe a little bit of a bigger margin on the 1,500, I'd imagine.
Yes, I mean, at the end, it's all about IRR, right? Yes, of course. If you invest hundreds of millions of dollars and you can, maintain your margin and, make your price basically 4 or 5 times more than what it is, it's a very good business proposition. I mean, just to give you an idea, if you're selling, 200,000 ton of anode, revenue is about $2 billion. And if you're making 30% margin, you're generating $600 million in cash flow. So, yeah, that's a very good business case. But you might have to invest $1.4 billion to do that, right? So there is give and take.
Yeah, but the payback still would only be a couple of years, I'd imagine. So if you look at it on normal mining metrics of setting up a new big copper mine or whatever, you've seen paybacks that are a lot longer than that.
Of course.
So talk to me about the downstream, because obviously that is potentially a lot of value to be unlocked there. But like I said, it's expensive to get it up and running. What's the latest in terms of developments on building that downstream processing?
Yeah, it's the downstream activity. I mean, we announced a few weeks ago that we bought this business in Germany from the area that was producing anode material for solid-state batteries. And for us, that was a very interesting deal because, a lot of people talk about lithium-ion batteries saying, what's the next technology? And it's a solid-state battery. And the solid-state battery doesn't actually use graphite as a material in the anode. It uses a hard carbon porous material. And so the business we bought in Germany basically produces that material. But the team that's been working on this material for the last 10 years really understands electrochemistry, has a fully loaded lab that enables them to do all the characterization of the graphite and the battery once the battery is made. So, we acquired that team and now they're fully integrated into Northern Graphite's team. So we're now able to produce battery materials in the lab. We're now able to make batteries and test those batteries ourselves and be able to show customers what we can do with our graphite. And that's a huge capability that we require.
But in the short term, is that capability is to demonstrate the potential, it's not a cash generator as such at the moment, I'd imagine. That is a validation of the product you'll be able to create.
Well, it's more than that because, every battery manufacturer has specific specifications that they have to meet. So basically, this group is our product development group that can turn our graphite into an anode material that the customer can use and work with our partner to design the site that we need in order to be able to meet that and allow us to start negotiating offtakes. Because unless you have a product, what are you negotiating on?
So what does that mean in terms of actually building this downstream facility, though? How does that tie into you actually getting to that point?
Yeah, I think it really accelerates it for us, because we have all that knowledge. There's also engineering resources in that team. And also they have existing relationships with clients because they were qualifying in the solid-state battery. It's usually the same companies that are working in both. So, it really accelerates everything for us. And, if you were to set up a lab like that yourself and hiring the people, it'd take a couple of years, But the fact that we bought it off the shelf, gives us immediate access to the resources and the capability. So it's really helping us go much faster. And then, if you look at the market, there was the announcement by Nouveau Monde that was made earlier this month. And what you saw is that, they sold their entire capacity to 2 OEMs. and they did so for a $25 million investment for 12.5% of the company. And, that means that 40,000 tons that Nouveau was, we're getting ready to bring to market, in 29 or 30, that's gone now.
Gone already. Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
So, it really helps us because there isn't that much capacity coming on. And if you're a battery manufacturer and you want graphite, anode material from natural sources, you better hurry and start making your bands.
And so what is the next steps for you? I guess I assume you're already in off-take discussions and whatnot with different groups, but talk me through the next 12 months and what the game plan is moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, ramping up Lac des Iles, that's key for us. And so that's what we're working on. Finalizing the financing on Namibia to do that $35 million move without diluting our shareholder base. That's the second piece. And then getting it done by beginning of 25 so we can be in production and basically generating more cash flow. And then finalizing our plans for the downstream, mostly in Baie-Comeau and with the customers that we would use by leveraging the battery materials group we have whilst we continue to push also the solid state business, because that's a very interesting angle for us.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.